if you want to be someone who's really a charismatic speaker, number one, find like a super drive. If you're not at that point of complete like desperation, think about actually what are going to be the consequences if you don't change, what's going to be the pleasure if you do, like from your position. And then secondly, find someone to role model.
Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, the show for today's leaders who want to get ahead and stay ahead, because we believe great leaders aren't born or made, they're always in the making. I'm your host, Damon Lemby, two-time best-selling author and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has helped upskill over 2 million people. In just a moment, my good buddy Jonny Pardoe will be joining us. His podcast, The Self-esteem and Confidence Mindset, has over 3.3 million downloads. Jonny's got 23,000 subscribers on Spotify, and he's a podcast host and a men's health advocate. Jonny and I are going to dive deep into topics like how to break the loop of overthinking, why self-esteem holds so many people back, his fast-track formula for launching a podcast that will build trust and authority, and the daily mindset practice that will help you change the way you lead starting today. So Jonny, you've been really open about your own personal struggles with self-esteem and confidence. Yet here we are, and you've got one of the largest shows in the world around confidence. How did this all happen?
Yeah, it's kind of like, it surprised me, but doesn't surprise me with the kind of like consistency. But yeah, it's basically, I started my podcast around end of 2019. And it was very much like I was doing a few things on social media, YouTube, pick myself out there, just sharing my personal growth, because I always love creating, and I guess it was like a new medium for me. So I started going on podcasts because I think I heard someone like Gary V or something say, get on podcasts. And I'm like, okay, try it, have a go, don't overthink it. And yeah, I started posting some of my videos on there. And I went back to my first episode again the other day, actually. It's quite interesting. But yeah, and then I kept like making more and more episodes, and essentially what I was doing was just sharing my journey of working through like self-esteem blocks or confidence blocks and overcoming them. Now, I'm not going to say I've got it like absolutely nailed right now. It's always an ongoing journey. I think it's like your physical health. It's a mental muscle to practice every day. It's like, you don't just go, right, I've got good self-esteem for life and I'm sorted. It's like constant, and especially certain areas like intimate relationships, or like massive business impacts are always going to like impact you in those, especially on like self-esteem. So it's important to always exercise it. And I've certainly gone through those, and it's really tested me even when I started. But yeah, I kept just sharing like some tips that worked for me over the years. And then it just started, developing a following, and I started seeing what was working in terms of what people were responding to, what were the episodes people wanted, what value they were getting. And I started making more and more episodes. And yeah, it just over like 2020, 2021, going on to, now 2025, it just happened to develop millions of downloads. And there are a few tricks I picked up along the way to, really get my message out there and impact people. But yeah, essentially, then I started getting guests on in like 2021 so people could add value. And that was really, really cool, getting to interview some big names like John D. Martini, Peter Sage, Joseph McClendon, all these kind of great people I always like looked up to, and get them on the podcast and hear their stories. So yeah, that's kind of essentially my journey.
What was it like going back and listening to or watching your first episode? Was it kind of cringy or exciting to see the growth?
It's interesting. It wasn't cringy. It was, I knew back then that I made the episode very intentionally. I called it Making a Start. And it was like, I'd read enough, a lot of personal growth by then. And then I realized you don't start until you don't start. Like you have to start somewhere. And I knew the episode was going to be bad. And I said, basically, I'll start off by like talking about what t-shirt I was wearing. I'm like, no, that's not the formula to a good podcast, as I learned over time. It's instantly what the hook is. I can share some tips later. Instantly what the hook is. What is the episode about? But yeah, I went back to it, and I knew when I made that first episode at the time, it was something I had to start to improve. So I looked back and I went, I was absolutely right. I had to start to improve. And that's what the episode was called, Making a Start. But yeah, I guess I was proud of myself for like putting myself out there, even though I kept coming up with all these excuses before I did it. Like I had my coach at the time. I was like, "Oh yeah, I need to do some more this justifiable logic, which is fear. I've got to do some more research before I do my first video. I've got to do this. I've got to practice some more." And then eventually, even though she was quite a like gentle, loving coach, she did push me a little bit. So yeah, it was cool watching it.
It's even kind of like that with sales and doing cold calling. A lot of times I find people are call reluctant, and so they hide behind, I got to do more research, I got to do this, I got to do that. At the end of the day, one of the things I really like about your work is that you got to just jump in and take action, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's sometimes I have to remind myself because I am quite an analytical like mind. I've got like a project management background, a sales background, although sales, like you just said, you got to like just jump in sometimes. I have got that like analytical mind that likes to think. But actually, when I look at my most successful things, it was like through action, like public speaking. I was terrified. How did I get good at that? I'm not the world's best right now. I always want to improve, and I certainly can take some tips. But like I used to be terrified to even talk in a meeting. And for me, it was just speaking up originally and then pushing myself to do again and again. And that built the confidence. Fortunately, there's no way around it than taking the action. Even if it's small steps, that's another thing. You don't have to take a great leap. It can be a small step sometimes, I would say as well.
For your own personal journey, when did you struggle most with self-esteem and confidence?
2019, I went through like a particularly like difficult year, but in my like there were times in sort of like my 20s when I noticed it was basically when external things weren't going from me. So I realized a lot of it was like externally driven, which obviously puts it always at risk. So it's like if I'm getting a job or I went through lots of job interviews, I'm great. If I'm dating like the pretty cool girl, like I'm feeling awesome about myself. If like it's not worked out with someone, I'm feeling dreadful about myself. I'm the worst person on the planet. I'm a loser. That was like how my self-esteem would go. So it's not a good formula. And I remember getting rejected by a lot of jobs, and I was just like, I'm hopeless. I'm useless. Like not it like in the place I work because I was on a temporary contract going for the permanent ones. So it was kind of like a journey through like most of my 20s, and even like like I'm 34 now, but even when I hit 30, I thought, I've nailed this. But then life has a way of sometimes presenting opportunities for you, put it that way. So yeah, it's been the times when I've been like completely reliant on external things. But yeah, for me in 2019, there was a particular downward kind of like spiral of things. And then I was just like, this is so bad. I need to do something about this. And then I started reading all I could, learning all I could, and then just implementing things and gradually building a better relationship with myself. And then that came into me sharing it on my podcast as I was working for it.
So Jonny, a lot of people in that position though, like where you were at in 2019, where things are really bad. I mean, I've been there myself too, right? And a lot of times people feel like paralyzed and stuck, but you pushed through and started really working on your inner self and yourself in general. What advice do you have for people who maybe feel paralyzed at that point?
Yeah, in terms of being stuck, because I've certainly like even since then, there's been moments in the years like where I've got like stuck again. Admittedly, I'm not gonna sit here and say I have no challenges, but yeah, like I think for me there has what like Tony Robbins. I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. And I've moved away from his work a bit more because it's kind of start there with personal growth and then kind of follow some other teachers, maybe like your Joe Dispenzas, who kind of teach it in a bit of a different kind of flowy way. But I remember Tony Robbins said something, and it's like people will like change from like inspiration or desperation. And that really resonated with me. And I think for me, I was in such a low and everything seemed so bad that I was like, right, I've got to make a change. But then you could also be really inspired to help someone. So one bit, like the really bit of advice I'd give is sometimes you like, as crazy as this sounds, sometimes you're not in enough, or you've not got enough of a drive to change, but you can find that, I found, if you dig deep enough. And what I found is, so that's like a real important foundation if you're like stuck for actually driving that change, because there's kind of that cliche of like, when your drive's big enough, like the how's like a lot easier, because else you're just like, I want to change about all these things. So digging into actually what's the pain in the past, present, and future really, really can be a helpful one. And also, what's the pleasure in the future, not in the past, but in the future. So getting that kind of drive really, really helped me. And it happened naturally when you're in a really bad place, but you don't need to get in the bad place. You just force yourself, thinking of what's actually my drive. But yeah, and then the second point I'd have, if you're like, okay, I'm really inspired, right? I'm going to do this. That's going to help you. But a shortcut I've always found from one of my mentors, this just a second point, would be to like role model someone. So find someone who's overcome a similar challenge to you and is in a position you want to be. Role modeling is super, super good for like building confidence. I'm a big fan of always trying to get coaches and mentors who have overcome a problem I'm in and got a result. I'm not such a fan of getting, if I want a general life coach, that's different. That's fine because they ask questions in a certain way. But if I want to hire a coach, like I hired my, one of my latest coaches, because he was in this like real, he went from a state of being really stressed to like really calm and grounded. So I was like, I want some of that, right? And then working with him helped me a lot. There's always work to do on that, of course, but like if you see someone who's really good at something, look at like, if you don't hire them as a coach, look at three things, and that's their beliefs. What do they believe about themselves and the world? And how can you take some of their beliefs? Like if they're like, if you want to be someone who's really a charismatic speaker and you're, for example, and you're really scared of public speaking, look at someone like, I don't know, a Les Brown or someone who I've had the fortune of meeting. But like, what do they believe? They believe like, they just naturally like, I'm an outstanding speaker. And it's like, okay, that's a good belief you can start embedding, and then just, even if you don't believe at the start, just think you're a good speaker or a great speaker. Second thing is their physiology. How do they move their body? How do they present themselves? That's a good way to sort of model. And then the third bit is like their syntax. What's the order? What are a few things they do? So for someone to go to, speak directly to your question, just sum up those points. Number one, find like a super, super drive. If you're not at that point of complete like desperation, think about actually what are going to be the consequences if you don't change, and what's going to be the pleasure if you do, like from your position. And then secondly, find someone to role model.
I think that's so important. And I've heard you say this before, and I really believe it, is you should look for mentors or coaches who you inspire to be like, and comparing yourself to other people can be dangerous as well, right? If you're always looking at them like, oh, they're so successful and I'm just me. But I think having somebody to strive to want to be like and emulating, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel, can really help you with that inspiration and drive.
Yeah, sure. It's really, I'm glad you said that about you don't need to be someone else, and you're not comparing it. You said comparing yourself. Yeah, that's really important. We're not comparing ourselves here. It's about like you being you, but borrowing things that you would like to have in addition, that actually are inside of you, these great qualities, but you've just forgotten about often. As Les Brown actually says, there's greatness inside of you. So I find that's a really important thing. The comparison thing, I once heard a line on that, and it was because comparison is so easy. We do it in this day and age, and it's very, it's almost like a survival thing sometimes. But actually, social media makes it worse, of course. But it's a mentor said of mine. He said, "Self to self for progress, and then self to others for possibility." And what that means is you compare yourself to where you were previously. So you're not comparing yourself to someone else. You compare it on your progress, but you look at someone else and think, oh, that's what's possible. What can I learn from them? So that's something that's really helped me with comparison.
I like that. So you said self for progress, and then self to others for possibility, to like what is possible out there.
Yeah.
And how important is it for you to dream big, really?
I think, yeah, with the dreaming big, I like to sort of, yeah, dream big, but I also like to what one mistake I used to do just on this is I used to dream so big and it was like reality versus the dream. And it was just like me being a multi-millionaire on a beach, like traveling the world with the hot wife and the like all the like the world-renowned speaker and all the books best-selling and stuff like that. Um, which is still to come true, but like um and then me being like, this is years ago, like maybe 2016, like being miserable in a job like almost 10 years ago and hating life. It's like the dream is like, oh yeah, and it's like, oh, I'm here. So I think like having that vision is really, really great. But then what is really important for me is like setting that next kind of like milestone along the way, whether it's like X amount of money you want to make. So if you want to be a millionaire and you've never made more than 100,000 in a year, maybe you don't set yourself your next target's making 1 million. Maybe it's just making 10, $5,000 or something out of your own business or sales or job or something like that. Um, but yeah, I think dream big's great, but you dream like Peter Sage, I learned a lot from this, and it's like dream, you've got it there, and then, yeah, I like to just focus on what I'm going for next rather than being too attached to that.
I think it's important to dream big, to have moonshot goals, but also have milestones, stepping
Yeah.
stones along the way that you could achieve and also kind of pat yourself on the back, give yourself a little credit for. Because I think a lot of times where I've always struggled with imposter syndrome or whatever is just like if I set myself out to do something and I don't hit it, then I'm tough on myself. And that kind of leads into my next question, like, what's your definition of self-esteem?
Self-esteem, I try and keep it simple, and it's just essentially how much you like yourself. I think confidence for me is a bit different, and I can give my definition of that as
Sure.
well, if that'd be useful. Again, this is just my interpretation, what I learned, what it means for me. I'm never like these are the right answers. I'm always like whatever I share is open to. I think everything in life is almost subjective, but so hardcore facts. But yeah, like confidence for me is like the trust in your abilities. I don't I don't believe personally in a general confidence. I think it's specific. So it's like you could be a confident cook, but you're not very confident playing golf. Or you could be I could even be confident on a football pitch or soccer pitch. And then I not very confident like I don't know, like swimming or something. Or no, pretty confident swimming. Okay, cricket. I'm not very confident in cricket. Um, but or I could be confident playing at my level of football, but like our professional top Premier League, which is one of the best leagues in the world, I'm not going to be very confident if they put me on the pitch, am I? Like somehow magically. So I think for me, confidence is like trust and abilities, and that comes from like competency and like practice and repetition. But it also, I believe, if you've got good self-esteem, how much you like yourself, you're more likely to try stuff. You're more likely to keep going and build that confidence in things. But you can have someone, who's very confident in their job. And I've seen these people like high up, like director level and stuff like that. They've done the stuff and they're very confident, but actually they've got this really terrible self-talk and relationship with themselves behind the scenes. Well, I've seen it.
I mean, what you just touched on right there, self-talk, that is something that a lot of people struggle with. I mean, how we talk to ourselves, we would never talk to people, especially close to us. What advice do you have for people to first recognize that self-talk and then break out of that?
I'm a big like process and systems guy. So I'm a big process and systems guy because that's kind of how my mind works, and because I believe that brings a lot of like the unconscious conscious and makes things a bit more conscious. I need to make it conscious to work through it, because a lot of the times what I've learned in my experience is quite a lot of the questions will create a lot of our feelings, and kind of the questions can be like, what's wrong with me? How did I mess up? How great's that going to make you feel? Like, not great. But if it's like, what's amazing about me, what do I love about me, that's going to create a lot more empowering feelings, right? Even when you come to things. So for me, I think like people say things like affirmations. I think like saying the right words is really, really important and being conscious of it. But also feel like for me, you have to have feeling and meaning to it. Um, so like every single day I schedule what I call like the king hour. So it's like I'll walk, or I might even combine it with the gym sometimes or exercise. But I put myself in a state of certainty now. I'm going to be honest. I don't, not 100% of the time do I feel like absolutely certain I might be having a bad or tough day or emotions, coming up. But I make an intention to be in like this certainty mode. It's like upright and moving. And then I put as much of that powerful language in my head as possible. So then I find myself defaulting to more like certainty and good self-talk when I start doing that and training my nervous system. So I would say make a conscious practice of just saying some powerful words yourself, but put feeling to it. Don't just say it because that's not going to create the same input to you as possible. So like, yeah, even if that's in the morning, you're doing that. And then also, doing some kind of physiology practice where even if you do 5 minutes, you don't have to do an hour. Of just like put yourself in a state of certainty, even if you don't feel like it as well, will have an impact on your words. And also just making things like journaling and questioning can really help. So rather than just writing down your thoughts and get some of your struggles down, I definitely do that. But then I'd start asking myself empowering questions when I journal a lot as well to give me more empowering meanings and words.
I bet you probably look forward to your king hours, so to speak.
Yeah,
And
I do,
one of the
yeah.
things I found is sometimes I don't do a lot of journaling, but when I do and I write things down, it feels like there's a weight of the world that kind of comes off your back by just even if you just put it
Mm,
on the paper.
I love that. Yeah. No, I love that. You do that, David.
So if connecting the dots, you were at your kind of your lowest in 2019, and that's also when you first began your podcast. When you first started your podcast, were you doing it because you wanted to help other people, or is it to get things off your chest, or what was really your thought process with that?
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. Go back to 2019. So, um, for me, I think like if I like I'm pretty like honest guy. I think it was more about the creative process at the time. It was more like getting stuff off my chest. Like I do that now sometimes on my podcasts. But then I try and give practical tips as much as possible and how what I've done to overcome challenges and things like that. Um, but yeah, it was for me, it was kind of like I started loving the creative element and sharing things. And yeah, it was kind of almost therapeutic for me. Um, but yeah, the knock-on effect is it impacts other people. I know, and this is also what I'll say, like, don't don't worry about like just doing things for you to make you feel good, because when you feel good, you're more likely to create a good positive impact to other people. Sometimes, like in the personal growth world, it's sometimes like, and I've certainly been caught up on it. It's like, what's your why? Who are you serving? Who do you want to impact on the world? And I think it's important sometimes to be like selfishly selfless, because by like working on you, giving you what you need, that naturally happens as well. So that's what it was for me originally, just giving me what I needed. And it just happened to impact a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, so what I hear you saying is sometimes it doesn't have to be about what you're giving to other people. It's okay a little bit to be selfish and help yourself, and that's what you found
Mm.
through podcasting. What advice do you have for, let's say, leaders out there who want to get involved in podcasting or have their own podcast, but they say to themselves, because I was one of them, Johnny,
Mm.
I'm not a podcasting person.
What do I say to like, yeah, the leaders or the people who want to really share their voice? Um, Yeah, again, it's like thinking about how much more of an impact this does come back to other people a bit, but it's like it also, can give you a lot of benefit as an individual as well, like reach more people, maybe help your business, maybe, yeah, like give you more of that creative outlet. So yeah, understand like really digging into what it's going to give you and actually, yeah, what it may give others if as a leader, most lead really high quality leaders I know are just wanting to serve other people. But yeah, thinking about like the person you could help, but also what advantage it might give you. Um, but yeah, like with podcasting, like I do help obviously people specifically work on that, and I do it for very very reasonably and make it very quick because I don't want to overcomplicate it. But yeah, I just like it's just a case of committing to a date. It's like, all right, this is what I get everyone I work with to do. Just like commit to a date, and it's like, we'll figure it out. It's like I'm thinking about. I've heard people say I'm thinking about doing my podcast in about 3, 4, 6 months time. I'm like, you need 4 weeks. I'm like, like max. I had someone who worked with me recently, and she was like, I want to do it in 2. I was like, we're doing it in 2. So it's like, and it's just so simple. So yeah, I'd say commit to a date and, understand again your drive behind it, what it's going to give you. Or I'm just like, I want to start a podcast. It's a bit more than that. And yeah, and then, you don't need all this complicated tech. You don't need a massive studio. People do have studios, yeah, but there's some of the top podcasters do, but I don't. Like, and I've done very, very well. I was using a wardrobe for most of it. I've got like my living room, which has like a drying rack sometimes in the background. Um, so I'm able to interview some like big celebs and stuff like that, and just have really good conversations. So yeah, but having a plan in place is really, really key as well.
Do you think it's necessary or very helpful if somebody wants to get into the podcast world? Should they start off as guesting, or can they just jump right into launching their own podcast?
I think it's like preference. I think there's like some people I speak to are like, oh, I want to go and get a more. I mean, I personally, like, if I was recommending to someone, if they want to create more impact, get their voice out there, do both. Anyone who's starting a podcast, I definitely recommend getting on guest shows, because that's going to create their exposure. It's something I recommend to anyone I work with, clients and things like that. But yeah, if someone wants to start off by like guesting on podcasts, do that as well. So I think it's personal preference, but for anyone launching their own podcast, I usually highly recommend they get on platforms as well. But maximum exposure, again, it's good to do both.
For me, I got a question. If somebody, because people come to me all the time, or I even just go out and talk to people and say, you should start your own podcast. Do you think anybody can start their own podcast, or do you need to be like a business owner or a coach, or what are your thoughts on that?
Great question. I love that. I think anyone can be a podcaster personally. Not everyone's going to choose to be, of course, right? But I think we've all got like a message, we've got something to share. And of course, I'm never going to like force someone who's like, I don't want to do a podcast. No, right. I'm going to help someone who's like, I want to, I'm a little bit nervous, or they're like, I'm ready, tell me what to do. Of course, yeah, I'm actually going to see if we're a good fit and all that kind of thing. But like, some people won't. But I feel like everyone's gone through stuff. Everyone's got their own story. Everyone's got their own voice. Everyone's got their own message, even if they don't recognize it. I think is a lot of human beings I speak to, including myself in the past, is you don't recognize your own greatness and the great value you've got. So yeah, like stories are really something that connect with other people. So yeah, I like if you like I've many people like had hesitation. I don't know what I talk about, but when you talk, they've actually got a lot of stories and a lot of value and life experience they can offer.
Is that something you help them unlock it when they first come to you? Because I could see that happening. Because people tell me all the time, because I'm so pumped up about doing podcasting now. I've only done this for 2 years, nothing like you, but it almost comes into every conversation I have with people. And I'm like, you should be podcast as a guest, or you should start your own show. And one of the very first things they say is, well, I don't know if I have enough to talk about, or nobody's going to really be interested in what I have to say. If I pointed them to you, would you help them unlock what some of those stories are?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely something I do. I mean, quite a lot of people have like maybe an idea. Some people are like, I want to do a podcast, not sure. The other recommendation I have is, like a lot of big podcasters have started off with, is you can always interview people. You can just focus on that, and then you can get the experience of interviewing. Interviewing is really fun because you get to learn a lot as well. I've got you coming on my show in the following week. So, like those opportunities I get to learn, like I just had one earlier with someone talking about sales and confidence. which was a really cool conversation after she sold me 5 years ago when we met. Yeah, one of the best salespeople I've actually ever met, but like, bizarrely, but like, yeah, like I feel like you can also interview people if you're like, will I have enough subjects? Because you're always going to have enough subjects if you interview people as well. But yeah, it's certainly something I help people like unlock as well. There's options you could have like one subject and you could talk about it for an hour and you could make that into several episodes. You could just be like interviewing someone each week. There's possibilities to just kind of give like a bit of a journal of your like previous week and kind of how that relates to your subject. And then obviously there's parts around actually what is your story, what is your message, what you like learning about, what you're passionate about. And yeah, there's a lot of possibilities in that way.
How has podcasting helped you in your own personal leadership journey?
When I'm like having guests on, when I'm talking about certain subjects and sharing like what I'm learning, what I'm doing, it really allows me to up my game. So it's like, right, okay, I'm going to be talking about that subject. Right, okay. I realize I've got something else to improve in my life and like be the example. Um, it's also allowed me to understand others a lot more, like my listeners, and think more from a perspective what others need rather than just be like, you know, talking about myself. So it's really helped me in that way. And it's also allowed me to kind of develop the skills that I've needed to develop, like interviewing and speaking, uh, knowing how to like lead a guest and how you go through those conversations as well. Understanding like the boundaries for like my audience and protecting people. I've done that in project management and sales as well, but it's like certain people, I get a lot of requests. So it's like, I want to talk about all of this. Okay, great. What's that got to do with my podcast? How's this going to give value to my listener? Most I get a pretty good messages, but now and then there's this person's an expert in accountancy. I'm like, great. What's that got to do with the podcast? Kind of thing. So, yeah, those are just some of the things it's helped me with in leadership.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I actually just did a little solo episode about this the other day. I think podcasting has helped me, both guesting and hosting, become a better listener, a better storyteller, and learning how to connect with people faster, which I think is super important. Because, when you bring on guests, especially if you don't do like a pre-call or anything, you have a minute or two to kind of connect with them because you want to build that trust so they open up. So I just think that there's so many, I'm just kind of saying this out loud for our listeners. There's just so many benefits for you when it comes to podcasting, and it gets you out of your comfort zone. I mean, really out of your comfort zone, having these conversations. But I mean, let's be honest, man, you've had millions of downloads, and there are millions of podcasts who don't have any downloads. What are some of the tips and tricks that you can share that's made you so successful in this field?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to share that. And I don't, they're not like complicated ones. They're actually quite simple. And I
Good. That's better.
I just like, when, I work with someone as opposed to just like sharing publicly. I don't tend to share any different information. It's just someone I work with. It's very tailored, specific, really focusing on them, making sure they're held accountable, but I share the same information in terms of my tips. Now, what I would say is, like, it sounds so silly, but like, it's not silly. It's simple. It's consistency. It's like, you gotta like stick to a consistent cycle of podcasts. I've seen people say, someone's like, oh, you want to connect with Jonny Pardoe, and it's like, here, like a friend on Facebook or something, and I connect with them. And I'm like, oh, okay. Someone says, you wanted me to have a look at your podcast. It's like, sure, no problem. And they said, oh, yes, please. So I said, all right, yeah, I'm not going to jump on the call or anything like that, or a sales call. I'm just here to help you, right? And then I said, I'll have a quick look. So I'll have a quick look and I'll be like, see, like they published like one month and then two, like 2 months ago. And then it's like, before that, it was 4 months ago. And it's like, you can see the problem. There's no consistency. So you got to stick to a consistent schedule, minimum 1 a week. If you can do more, that's great. I say for like that. a key one that lots of people miss this one, and I got it right. I got it right. It's keeping your title and your episode names very, very simple, like very basic, like not clever, simple and clear. Because people are looking for certain problems, are looking for certain things. We think in our mind, my fancy name is going to attract a lot of listeners, but it's like, that's good to you and your friends, but someone else is looking for a problem for themselves. So that's a real essential that I see missed so many times. I had a friend, I got a friend, I don't speak to her as much because due to travel and stuff, but she's like an amazing speaker, amazing coach, so good, right? She didn't ask for my help or anything, but she started a podcast years ago, and she was targeting leaders, real high executives and things like that. And what she was doing was helping them with like connecting to the inner child. So like that's really good for self-esteem, by the way. Inner child work, loving your child. I do it every day. But anyway, she was trying to connect leaders to their like inner child, and that makes sense. That's a need, but like the leaders, the CEOs were typically, they're looking for like either growing their business, maybe they are looking for health support, maybe it is relationship support. That's what they're looking for on the surface. So that's what you got to be appealing to them on the podcast. You can give them the info in it, but she had called it something like a magical like creature podcast or something like that. It was along those lines, and it like got nothing. And you can see the problem. It's like no leader is looking for like a magical creature podcast. It's just, so that's what the people, their idea is like, I'm going to create this creative thing to go into their deep needs. But it's like, that's not what people are looking for. So you got to be very clear on the title. And for me, I make sure I'm very keyword heavy, very simple. Never call it your name. Tony Robbins podcast. Tony Robbins is Tony Robbins. He can get away. Mel Robbins can get away with it. Gabby Bernstein can get away with it. Jay Shetty can get that. They're, we know these people, right? They've got like millions and millions behind them. So that's really, really important. And yeah, just starting off the third point I'll give, because I could give loads, but I'll leave on this one, is just making sure your episodes always start off with a clear kind of message of what's coming up. Not a lot of my first episode that I learned from when I'm talking about, I was thinking about making a podcast today and I'm wearing this blue t-shirt, I was actually wearing a blue t-shirt. I'm wearing one now, but yeah, I was wearing this blue t-shirt and then I was going to change. And it's like, no one really cares about that, but people are like, I'm walking the dog, or I had some coffee this morning. It's like, no, just get to the, like, what is going to be the value in this episode today? Like you introduced us off today, like, what is going to be the value today? What are people going to get rather than all this fluff as well? Because people are coming for the value.
No, I think that those are three awesome tips. And just to kind of recap those for our audience, number one, as you said, is consistency. And that consistency has to be at least once a week. Number two is simplicity, especially around titles. And this is really important. It's not so much about you, but it's about what your people are going to be looking for, right? Because you can have all these cute, creative words, but if people don't understand it, forget it. They're just going to go somewhere else. And number three is within the first minute, really, Jonny, right? You got to hook them with what the episode is going to be about. Because if you waste your time and do long introductions or anything, they're just going to click out. So you got to get them hooked in the first minute or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say even quicker than that. And the first is another little thing I'll share. Like within the first 10 seconds is very important, because what Apple Podcasts actually does is it transcribes your first like 10, 15 seconds, and then it puts it in the description. It'll transcribe it. So if you have keywords heavy at the start of your episodes of what you're going to be talking about, Apple will transcribe it, and then that makes your episode even more search term heavy for the terms.
That's great advice. One thing that, like I said, I've only been doing this for 2 years, but I get a lot of people contacting me who have their own podcasts asking for advice and questions, which is great. But one of the questions, Jonny, that they ask me all the time, and I want to hear what you have to say, is how do you get guests to share your episode?
Yeah, I love I love it because I just had someone who's a very successful business owner and entrepreneur who's recently started his, helped him with his. It's really cool to see. And now he does have a studio because he's like, he lives in Dubai and he's done very well for himself and he hires like a little studio and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. But you don't have to do that. Certainly do the basics like I do. Um, but he was talking, me and him were talking, and he was like, he was saying, "Oh, I had a guest." He was talking about a guest, and he had this situation the other day. I won't go into it, but um, yeah, like with guests, what I like to say is up front, you could only do so much in terms of just giving the preparation and then just the ask of them. So these are kind of the tips I'd give. I would say up front before the episode, say, "Are you willing to share this?" That's not like forcing them to do it, but it's like, "Are you willing to share it?" And most of the time they're going to say like, yes. So at least they're giving you like their word. So asking them in advance, and I get them to answer in like Calendly or something like that, is a really powerful one. And then after the episode's done, just make it as simple as possible for them. Like if you give them, often agencies will ask me for like the video that I've made and they'll like cut it up and maybe share it, which is really cool. I had a guy, James Swanick, on recently who's all about quitting alcohol. And yeah, he's got a big team and he's like, "Can you send me the video?" I did. And he's sending all these clips out, which is really, really cool, of it and promoting it. I think it's very popular. But yeah, like make it as simple as possible if you can for them to share it. Like give them a photo, give them a video file, give them a couple of reminders as well. Like at the end of the day, if you do that and they still don't share, that's going to be probably the minority in my view. But sometimes people, everyone's busy. I actually banned the word busy from my life because it's like an excuse word because everyone's always got stuff on, in my opinion. You could be busy sitting on the sofa watching TV. Like there's always stuff going on, right?
Totally.
So I just banned the word. Like everyone's always got stuff on, but make it simple. If they still don't, you can't really do much about someone giving you a word, and make it as simple as possible. But that's what I would suggest.
No, that's great advice. Make it simple. Ask them beforehand, like you said. And also, one little tip that somebody told me is if you're interviewing them, try to come up with relatively new content that maybe they haven't talked about 1,000 times. Because if it's relatively new, I interviewed this gentleman the other day, this founder of this company, and he's like, "Hey, this is great. This is something I haven't really talked about that often. I can't wait to get it to my marketing team to get them out there to share that instead of the same thing that they talk about a lot." But yeah, people always could say they're busy, but look, everybody's busy. They could find time to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you find that your solo episodes or your interview episodes do better?
I'm finding at the moment, like I always look at my stats, but I'm always finding the interview ones are doing a lot better. It's very interesting to look at trends. I used to find the shorter ones like short episodes do really well, but I'm actually finding the long form interview ones are doing very well. So yeah, it's interesting.
And do you recommend for your new clients to come to you, should they be doing video and audio, or should they just start off with audio if it's simpler?
I'm very simple. I do it on like Zoom, or you can do it something like Riverside, like we're doing on right now. But and then you get like a video and audio file. Do it something when you get both. I always do Zoom, but yeah, Riverside's good as well. But yeah, and then I put one version on YouTube, because YouTube's actually it's definitely very good to be putting things on because it's a big platform. And then I'd recommend doing like the audio onto a podcast platform as well, so people can listen. So it's just widespread as much as possible. I have had someone who's like really building her confidence. She's doing amazing. But she's not, she's beginning with not doing video. She's just, using a script and things like that. And she's just been consistent, doing some, really improving her guests. I'm so proud of her. She's doing amazing. But yeah, she's like kind of beginning without like a video because, due to like working for her stuff. But like, I would recommend to most people, if you could do both, do both.
Jonny, I mean, thank you so much. You've been so gracious with your advice around all this stuff. So I typically have one final question, but for you, I actually have two.
Yay.
What is one thing you've learned about either self-esteem or confidence through all your podcast interviews over the years? And two, can you leave us with one more tip around podcasting?
I think for me, it's like the ones like the guests I can genuinely, and that's most of them, by the way, got that genuine like certainty in themselves, like absolutely comfortable in themselves and what they're sharing. Um, is a couple of things they're doing in sequence. Is one, they've built up in their mind this belief in themselves. So, they've all got different techniques. It might be like visualization, might be like meditation, might be like saying these things, but they're all building up this psychological power of inside themselves. So they've like got this like certainty in themselves, but that alone is not as powerful if you don't do the action. So they're all like consistently taking a massive amount of action. Now I've learned, and I personally feel for me, that if you take a load of action and you don't work on that like psychology and what you're thinking, then like you might get exhausted, or like when the challenges come up, it puts you back. So I think it's important to still work on like your mind as well as taking the action. But if you just work on your mind and don't take any action, your mind's gonna go like, who are you kidding? You're not doing anything. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I've learned. People really believe in themselves. They've like worked on that, but then they're also doing a massive amount of action at the same time. So that's be what I've learned from the guests. I kind of make it very simple takeaway. What's one extra tip on the podcasting side? I would suggest like really knowing your listener and who you're talking to. And that's a very classic kind of business one as well, like know who you're talking to. But at first, just find like maybe someone listen to podcasts, or maybe a client you work with who likes podcasts, or even like Facebook groups where people are talking about podcasts, and just make kind of an understanding. And then with time, have conversations with your audience so you can really start understanding the language, what they like. It sometimes surprises you. What are some of the kind of things they say? And I would say like, yeah, then start focusing on giving more of that value and using that for the growth. Before you start looking into things like sponsorship and affiliates, you don't want to worry about that at the beginning, because sponsors will want a massive amount of downloads anyway, usually. But you can start, giving more and more value to begin with. But knowing your listener is really, really key.
Yeah, for knowing your listeners, I'm actually reading Tom Webster's new book about that, which is pretty cool. I heard him speak at Podfest. Jonny, you've been awesome. Just to recap a little bit of what we talked about. We talked about self-esteem and confidence, the importance of taking action, because nothing's really going to happen if you don't take action. And you can build confidence that way. And self-esteem, about how you talk to yourself, self-talk, the importance of doing the inner work, and also making sure, focusing on doing work around psychology and your physical being as well. And you share with us some of your struggles that you had going back to 2019 and how podcasting has helped you gotten through this. You gave some brilliant, like literally a masterclass on podcast in the time we have, and you're so generous sharing it. And so where can our audience connect with you at?
Sure. Yeah. I'm on Instagram. It's probably the main one to get on contact with. I've got all the platforms, so I don't use TikTok as much as I'd like to. So I'd say Instagram, Facebook. I post the same things very regularly for either of those. Do post on LinkedIn as well, and I do post kind of stuff I do post and share is like a lot about. I'm big on men's mental health. We didn't go into that, as well as the self-esteem and confidence. I'm big into sort of sharing that and being very honest about that, and also obviously tips and things. But yeah, I like post a lot on there, but I also post obviously the podcast tips, how you can really share your voice. That's what I'm all about. So yeah, if you want to connect with me, it's Jonny C. Pardoe on either Facebook or Instagram, at Jonny C. Pardoe, or you just type in Jonny Pardoe, it'll pop up anyway. My name, or you can type in Jonny Pardoe on LinkedIn. I'll be on that as well. And yeah, if you want those, like I give lots of, free videos, free tips, things like that. And if you want to take it further and yeah, see if potentially we could work together and give you more specific support, just message me the words podcast power, I say to people. And yeah, then we can have a chat if we could give you some more, a few weeks to get your podcast out there or help grow it. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
So listeners, I want you to do me a favor. If you know of somebody who talks about podcasting or really enjoys podcasting, please send them this episode. We're going to put a bunch of links in there in the show notes, podcast power and whatever we can. And because I think it's so important, and personal branding these days are critical, in your professional and I think personal life. And I think, Jonny, if you're looking to start a podcast or get involved in podcast, you have to check out Jonny's work. And if you know somebody who's struggling with self-esteem and confidence, send them to his podcast. There'll be a link for that show in there as well. I've listened to a bunch of them in my preparation for meeting with Jonny today, and I think that there's gold in there. And I'm really grateful, Jonny, for you taking the time coming on today. I learned quite a bit, from you and the time I spent researching you. So thank you again. And for everybody out there, as I always say, stay curious, keep learning, and have a great day. See you next time.
What I tell people is negotiate for the 99%, not for the 1%. The reality is most people negotiate as if they're buying a car. I'm dealing with a car dealer. It's a one-time thing. I'm not going to